On the build show today, we're talking about an insulated slab foundation. This is the first time I've ever done this detail. I got a lot of cool things to show you guys. Today's video is sponsored by Halo Insulation. Let's get going. All right guys, so a little context before we get into the details. First off, this is a Texas house that my company's building. And it's pretty common for us to do slab on grade foundations where you basically just have a huge concrete slab sitting right on the ground with some exterior grade beams that are dug into the rock. Now we do have a lot of rock in Texas and we don't have much of a frost line to speak of, so that's why it's pretty common to see slab on grade foundations. But the same type of foundation could be used in a really cold climate. You would just have deep exterior beams which would protrude below the frost line on the exterior. Now another big issue we have to deal with in the South is termites. So before I get into the insulation details, first let's talk about this slab and some of the termite details, and then we'll get into the insulation itself.
All right, first y'all, let me show you this non-toxic termite protection we did here that I really like. This is an Australian company called Termite, and what you're seeing here is this is a pre-made collar that slips down over top of the pipe. And then there's these stainless steel hose clamps. This collar is made from a really fine stainless steel mesh that's so fine that a termite's body cannot actually physically squeeze through it. So this is a physical barrier, not chemical. Typically when termites enter the house, they're gonna enter through cracks in the slab, through places that they can be unseen. And then they're gonna do that damage for months, years, maybe even a decade or two before you know about it. What's happening here is when they try to tunnel up that crack between the pipe, they're gonna hit this because this concrete's gonna come up a couple inches on top. This will be embedded in the concrete, and where that crack happens, where the pipe basically separates from the concrete, they can't get in that usual location. Now we've done that everywhere in the house. We've done it on tubs, we've done it on drains like you see here, we've done it on water pipes, and we've also done it on conduit. All right, now speaking of conduits, these gray pipes that you see here is conduit, which is going to get future wires or pipes or maybe even HVAC lines. At this particular location, we use 2-inch conduit, so we actually have electrical and low voltage going on here. But the reason we need these is this very large slab, like I said, 600 yards, actually has several different pods that land on top. And we purposely made a very low, basically no threshold between them. So we have nowhere to run the wires to connect the building if we wouldn't have done these conduits. Now, if you watch the videos at my house, I also ran conduits all kinds of places on my 2-story house. This is basically a 1-story house, so we could go up and over, but we can't go between pods. And that's where these conduits come in handy. You're also gonna see that these exit sometimes with bigger pipes where we could actually run the Freon lines on the outside of the house where the equipment's gonna go. All right, next let's talk slab top insulation. I got this detail from my buddy Steve Basic, an architect out of Boston, and I really like it. What's happening here is there's the curb around the whole outside of the house, and that's ultimately where these Benson wood panels that are being made in their factory will sit. And then where my feet are, you can see it's a pretty decent elevation drop. What's happening is this slab that will get poured here is the structural slab, meaning all the structure will sit on top of that. But the actual slab that your feet will walk on comes later. We've got kind of a modern look going on here with a concrete topping slab. So this recess gives us the ability to run the panels and then later come back and actually pour a finished and pretty slab, kind of like what happens all the time in the north with basements, where they pour the basement walls and then later they come back and pour the slab. We're basically doing that same exact detail here. Now, I've got my Halo foam stocked in the job shack, for lack of a better term now. One other thing I wanted to mention before we finish this part of the video, see how the forms on the side of the house are basically 2x6s? We've got an elevated slab here, and then there's a few parts like on the other side here that are pretty far out of the ground. In fact, we're like 8 feet out of the ground over there. And this little wing wall right here is probably 4 or 5 feet out of the ground. That's gonna form what we call board formed concrete. When we pull the forms, there's an impression on the concrete of the grain pattern of the wood, and also you get this really pretty kind of horizontal line. Architects absolutely love it and clients die for it. A couple things you need to know about that board formed concrete though. Number one, you need to educate your clients to say, it'll never be perfect. Anytime you pull a cake out of the cake form, If you're frosting it, you don't need to worry about it, but in this case, there's no frosting, there's no stucco. We're gonna leave that, which means that it's very likely we're gonna see some imperfections, some minor honeycombing, or places where there's an air bubble in there. Now, the way to minimize that and also get really strong concrete is to make sure you vibrate that concrete really well, or consolidate it. Now, we're actually using a brand new product from Milwaukee today, a battery operated backpack vibrator. The guys actually have 2 or 3 vibrators going on this job because it's a pretty large job. We have 22 concrete guys and we're pouring like 400 some yards today. But what's gonna happen is they're gonna stick their vibrator down into the forms. It's gonna oscillate inside that concrete and it's gonna force those air bubbles up, and that will help get rid of honeycombing. And again, you need to really educate your clients that there could be some honeycombing, there's gonna be some bubbles. We're just gonna try and minimize that as much as possible. And that cordless vibrator really is nice because now I don't have to worry about that cord from the vibrator damaging finished concrete and making an impression on the concrete. As the guys are using that, they're able to basically cordlessly vibrate all the way down that beam, and it's really nice to have that MX fuel. Now, we have several batteries too, so we'll get full day performance out of that backpack. Let's come back when we're ready to start insulating. All right, guys, so this is the first time I've done a concrete slab that's fully insulated. I've done some perimeter insulation before, but I could never get my mind around putting insulation on top of the dirt and then pouring concrete on top of that. But this, on the other hand, makes a lot of sense to me. So you saw already what we did in this foundation. We poured basically a standard slab on grade foundation. But you're gonna notice on the perimeter that everything is lower. So come on over here and you can see some of those details. So for instance, this slab here, this is the original slab that we poured. And you can see that there's a curb all the way around the building. Let's actually verify that curb height. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head. Okay, so this curb right here from this concrete to the top is just shy of 13 inches. And then we're actually in a shower area, and that's why this is recessed. But you can see then we put insulation down everywhere else. Now, this insulation is originally intended to be below grade foundation insulation. This is 2 inches thick. This is made by Halo, and this is their Subterra insulation. So this is meant to be in an exterior location. Now, we're actually using it interior here, and you're gonna notice that this building is fully finished around me. Not finished, I should say, fully weather tight around me. We don't have any rain getting in. So it's almost as if we're building or insulating a basement slab, but in fact, this is a single story slab on grade house. Now, the panels that you're seeing here, stay tuned for a future video. These are all Benson wood panels that were prefabricated in their factory. So we built this house and we're weather tight in the matter of just 2 or 3 weeks. It was very quick. But then what we're setting up for now is all this Halo Subterra is down on top of the original foundation. And what I like about this in comparison to other details is that all of my structure, all of my, all my panels, all these columns that you're seeing over here, all those are bearing on concrete. And then I'm simply infilling everything else on top of the slab with this Halo Subterra. Now, this product is around R5 per inch. So with 2 inches thick, I've got an R10 insulated slab here. And then you're gonna notice on the perimeters, we're filling in the perimeters also with insulation. Now, tomorrow, the crew's coming to pour, not this building, but a second building on the site. And we're gonna be pouring a 4-inch slab. The insulation is right now, the rebar is right on top of the insulation now, but don't forget, we're gonna chair this up. You always want your rebar to be in the center of the concrete. That's how it's gonna give that concrete its strength. So we're gonna chair this up right before we pour it, but we didn't wanna do that now just so it wouldn't puncture the foam. Now, this foam does have a higher PSI level, and we verified all this with our engineer before we came to this stage, but this is 25 PSI foam. That means that it's 25 pounds per square inch, which means that we're like 3,000, 3,600 pounds per square foot before this foam will compress. So we're gonna have plenty of ability to pour concrete on top of this. And then you're gonna notice that there's no interior walls framed at this point. When we designed this house,
with Lake Flato, the architects, and with Benson Wood, who was the panel manufacturer. We designed it so there'd be really no load-bearing walls on the interior. Everything is bearing on the outside walls so that we could pour this complete slab on top here with a topping slab, and then we'll frame our interior walls. Right now we're actually in the master bedroom area of this house. And so when we pour that 4-inch concrete on top here, that's going to be finished concrete for us. That gave us a couple benefits. It meant that my foundation didn't have to be absolutely perfect or precision. It also allowed us to do the rough framing, which typically can be hard on slabs. You know, you've got 2x4s that are coming down to brace these walls as they're under construction. How do you attach those without hurting a finished slab? There's a lot of things that can go wrong. So what we're doing here then with that topping slab is that can be our slab that gets perfectly flat and looks really nice, because that's actually going to be the finished concrete for this house. And as a matter of fact, we're going to be coloring that concrete as well. We've got a couple samples over there showing the owners what are some of the options for what that concrete's going to look like. But this detail makes everything really easy for us as a builder, and I think also gives the client the best chance of getting a house that's going to be really durable and long lasting. For instance, all these penetrations right here, if you saw my foundation portion, every one of these has Termimesh on those, which is basically a stainless steel collar so the termites can't burrow up on all these penetrations. And we've got a lot. You know, this is a vent stack, this is water, we've got some electrical conduit over here, we've got more water pipes. All those have been Termimeshed, which means that now I didn't have to try and do something weird below this if I was doing this insulation right on the ground. Guys, that's really it. It's a pretty straightforward process. The crew's coming tomorrow to pour that other slab. We're going to pour that 4 inches, like I said, and share this rebar up. And then when we come back later and frame this, no one's going to know that insulation's buried in there. That's what I really like about this process. It's going to provide that thermal break, and it's going to make a huge difference on this house. Now, we're in Texas, which means that the big benefit of this insulation for us is going to be in the heating season. Massive heat loss through your slab in the wintertime. Our slabs feel really cold. And this house is not going to be that way. This slab is going to be nice and warm. And that concrete that's real thick on top here is going to take the temperature of the house and want to hold that temperature. It's going to be a really nice thermal mass. If you're in the north, though, the big reason to insulate your slab is for both heating and cooling reasons. It makes a huge difference. Now, you're going to vary your insulation thickness depending on where you are, but 2 inches for us, that R10 is going to make a massive difference. Guys, big thanks to our friends at Halo Insulation. That's the maker of this Subterra that we used here, but they have several other options for their graphite polystyrene insulation that's going to be really perfect for multiple locations, exterior, interior, below grade, that sort of thing. So check out their website for more information. Guys, if you're not currently a subscriber, hit that subscribe button below. We've got new content here every Tuesday and every Friday. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on The Build Show.